morning. I'm hearing a lot lately about the economy. It's the economy. Don't think about climate change. That has nothing to do with the economy. But is that really true? Let's think of the economy. What makes up the United States economy? Revenue from taxpayers. Revenue from corporations, or lack of revenue from corporations. Worker productivity. All goes into the economy. Debts owed the federal government. The federal government lends out money, it collects money. Everything that we do in America makes up our economy. We had those 87,000 IRS folks, we'd have a lot more money in the federal coffers that could be dispensed around the country. The economy is people working, chugging along, making goods and products for sale. What happens when we've got climate change and heat waves and heat domes? Well, our productivity goes down. That affects the economy in a negative way. For the economy to be boosted and productive, we got to be making more goods. But when the climate says, it's too darn hot here in Arizona and Texas and New Mexico, and a lot of crops are going to die, that impacts the economy. When Florida floods out and insurance companies pull their money out of Florida and don't want to insure folks, that affects the economy negatively. What do you think is going to happen to those folks without insurance? Are they going to be able to rebuild? They may not. So when you think of the economy, you really can't not help thinking about climate change and the negative impact climate change is having on the economy. Of course, if we got rid of fossil fuels, or we took away their subsidies, which are about $1 trillion, we'd have a much healthier economy. So when you think of a world that is disconnected from climate, don't think that way. It affects the economy directly. We want our economy to grow. And just like in World War II, when folks were too myopic to understand that they could build trucks and planes and gear up for the war, they'd make more money than they had before. Till they understood it in real bucks, they didn't want war at all. They didn't want to join the Europeans. Only when they knew that they could make a profit did corporations sign on to World War II. So when you're thinking about profits, you're thinking about productivity, think about us. We make up the economy. What affects us affects the productivity of our economy. If the climate heats up any more, well, it's all well and good for the medjool dates to be thriving in Arizona. They like 100 days of heat. But people can't survive. We need water, we need food, we need air conditioning, we need heat pumps, and so much else. So no siree, let's not disconnect the economy from the climate. We affect the climate and we affect the economy directly. In Lulu's cabinet and his policies, he's now reversing the deforestation in the Amazon. And all the nations who are bordering the Amazon are now meeting to come up with climate plans so that they are no longer destroying their own countries. Peru is suing Germany because they see their glaciers melting and 170,000 people are going to be flooded, and they're concerned. And what do you think is going to happen to their economy? Their economy is going to go way down. Their productivity is going to be way down. People are not going to survive the flood. And if they do, they're going to have to be moved to other places. At this point in time, it's necessary to think renewable energy. We can't, on the one hand, be giving out more permits for fossil fuels than we've ever done before, and on the other hand say, oh yeah, we're supporting a green economy. We don't have the trees that are necessary to be planted in the right places with enough seedlings. So that's out of the question. We got to start now building up rootstocks for trees to plant. We should be going back to the indigenous people and asking them what they would do to save our water and our land. They know. In Europe, they're using solar panels to shield their crops. And then they pick during the evening hours when it's not so hot. There's a lot we can do when we set our mind to it. But we haven't done it. We just talk about it. And we got fancy catchwords for everyone to listen to. Oh, that corporation is ESG. Well, do you really know what ESG stands for? And do you really know how many corporations follow the ESGs? The ESGs stand for being a steward of the environment, being sustainable, and being a good corporation that cares about the community that you're in. When I asked at many conferences that I attended, who's practicing the ESGs? Do you know? I couldn't even get a number. I couldn't even get a percent of the Fortune 1000 companies that actually practice ESGs. They talk about it a lot, but nobody does anything. After all, if you really cared about the ESGs, every one of us working in America would have a decent wage. Our minimum wage would be increased. Our water breaks would be mandated so that not only did we take those breaks for water, but we got enough. I know when I was a union shop, we had to have a half-hour break in the morning, we had a 45-minute lunch break, and we had another half-hour break in the afternoon. I used to load up all the goods that I needed for the week before the men got on the job, because I knew it was going to be so much longer if they had to then wait for goods to be taken to them. And I would lose money. But hey, those men are entitled to their breaks. And now, with the heat at 110 degrees all over, I don't even know if it's safe to go out and do any real heavy lifting of construction work or agricultural work. Folks are dying. And what do you think happens to the economy when that happens? The economy goes down. Our gross domestic product goes down. So it would be far better if corporations did indeed follow the ESGs. Then labor would have a say in management of that corporation. Labor could put in the safety and the controls that are necessary to keep people out of harm's way. Today's corporation? They're unaccountable. They look at all of us as if we're widgets. You plug them in, you plug them out. I just read an incredible headline in The Guardian this morning. It said, if you feed the homeless in Houston, Texas, you could be fined. So now people are supposed to step over dead bodies and make believe that it didn't happen? When I read in California, the homeless are not migrants. The homeless are really people who just can't afford the rents. The rents are too darn high. They don't have protections for renters like we do in New York City. No siree. In California, if you don't have a lease and you can't pay the rent, you're evicted in 24 hours. If you have a lease and you can't pay the rent, you got 2 weeks. They don't deserve to be homeless. If we had a living wage for everyone, which I think many years ago Elizabeth Warren had said was about 22 to 25 bucks an hour, and that was pre-pandemic. I imagine it's pretty much the same right now. Why do you think we're building all those factories in the South? That's so they don't have to have unions. Without unions, you don't have any representation at all. Nothing. So even though folks are working and they're doing important work in jobs, in factories that require skills, they're not making the same bucks, probably, that the Ford Motor Company people I knew in 1976 made 40 bucks an hour. I wonder who's making that today. So don't tell me the economy is separate from climate, or corporations don't have to be responsible stewards of labor and the environment. They do. I remember the fossil fuel companies said when they could no longer justify being in existence, they would cease operations because the cost of sustaining them was too darn high. Well, I think this year has proved the cost of sustaining fossil fuels is too darn high. How many more disasters do we have to see before we realize that $1 trillion that we give in subsidies to big oil and big agri, it's better off going back into the economy and raising our gross domestic product once again? America is a can-do country. We've always done the best we could. Don't let the politics affect us. Don't let catchwords like the economy, climate change, ESGs throw you off. It's all about keeping us, those of us who work, down, so that we don't look up and we don't understand the problems that one industry and most corporations, because they're unaccountable, have caused us. But we can right it. We can right that ship